Welcome to Food Friends, a podcast inspiring home cooks to try new dishes in the kitchen by sharing trusted recipes, tips, and friendship. Hi, I'm Sonia.
And I'm Carrie. We met in Los Angeles over 15 years ago as personal chefs and haven't stopped talking about food since. We're so glad you're here.
Hi, Carrie.
Hi, Sonia. Sonia, I really want to know, what was your best bite this week?
I've been really wanting to talk to you about this because it's something that we mentioned on our 30-minute indulgent meal episode a few months ago. And I finally made it. It's Justine Doiron's recipe for this creamy butter beans. And we'll link the exact recipe because I think I might not be saying the title exactly right. So Justine Doiron has the popular Instagram and TikTok account, Justine Snacks. She's known for plant-forward recipes. We had her on the podcast to talk about her cookbook and some of her great recipes.
Is great. Yes.
It's a great book. And she has just a lot of ideas around beans. And this recipe really caught my eye. So it takes a total of 15 minutes.
Oh, wow. I'm so in already.
It's so fast. And it was like one of those nights where I was like, what can I make really fast? But it has every element you want. It has creamy beans. You add in lemony greens, kale specifically, and you can do a crunchy breadcrumb topping at the end. I made the beans exactly as written and kind of riffed on the rest. Also because I didn't have kale, I had a rab in my fridge, like greens. So I feel like this could work with a lot of different greens, but the base of it is what's delicious. So if you can't find butter beans, you can absolutely use like cannellini beans or even lima beans is recommended.
Like a frozen lima bean or a canned?
Like canned, I think is what she means. I think they're just easier to find. I have one store in town where I can find canned butter beans, and I always kind of grab a couple to keep in my pantry because I love them so much. But I really think this is more about the flavor than the bean. So if you just have white beans or white navy beans, those will work too. So it's 1 can of beans, and you could double this if you need to feed 4. This feeds about 2 to 3. Olive oil. And then the other ingredients are just tomato paste, garlic, chili flake, and milk. So this is what's interesting about it. So you get your olive oil in the pan with some garlic and some chili flake, and you bloom that garlic and the chili, and you're just cooking that for like 2 minutes. Then you add
the most. Yeah.
Then you add the tomato paste. And then you want to get that tomato paste like a shade or 2 darker, which also only takes a couple minutes. And then you add this milk and you pour it in gradually, and you sort of stir it in, and it emulsifies with that tomato paste and with those oils, and you let it bubble. And she has you kind of just have it reduce for 4 or 5 minutes on low. So it simmers away, it bubbles, it thickens a little bit naturally. You're not looking for it to like heavily reduce. And then you add your drained beans, and you're just warming them through for a minute or 2. So your beans really take maybe 10 minutes, 15 tops.
Wow. First of all, I remember when we were talking to her, I think she said her favorite pantry ingredient is tomato paste. And I also think this is where you threw out if you open up a can of tomato paste and you don't use it all, you spread it in a circle on a piece of like wax paper or parchment paper and put it in your freezer. So you have these like little right? Isn't that what
I flatten it out? Yeah, I spread it out. I flatten it out. You can do that in a Ziploc bag, or you could do it on parchment, and then you can freeze it in a sheet. And then I break off frozen tomato paste whenever I need it. If I have a can. I also love the tubes. I don't know. She said it was her favorite. She might have. It's definitely my favorite pantry staple.
Yeah,
I'm obsessed.
I think it's just one of those unsung heroes. But I think this is so genius because it's really simple. And I'm kind of embarrassed that I haven't made this recipe at first yet.
Don't be embarrassed.
Well, I just think, I'm not that familiar with butter beans. I use chickpeas, I use white beans, I use black beans, I use pintos, all those. And so this is a real opportunity to kind of forge a new path to a bean, which is something that I love, that you love, that we've bonded over. And clearly this is something that Justine cooks a lot with too.
Yeah, if you can track down butter beans, that's great. I bet you can order them online if you can't find them near you. Although in Los Angeles, I'm certain,
I'm sure there's somewhere.
Monsieur
Yeah.
Marcel or somewhere like that will have them if your grocery store doesn't. I find them here in Portland at a place called New Seasons, if anyone
Okay.
locally is curious. So then she also has you make this kale where she has you like massage it in lemon or dress it in lemon. I kind of didn't do all that. I just added my greens to this pot at the end and just let them sort of steam for a minute. I really just got them softened. I didn't cook them fully. And then while the beans were going on, I had another pan that I just toasted some panko in, which just involves a little butter, a little oil, a little bit of minced garlic. And I've already minced garlic for the beans. So I just
Right. You just cut a little bit of that off. Yeah.
I took a little bit of that for the panko, add my breadcrumbs to that mixture, saute them in the pan until golden. So then I just plated these creamy beans with the greens and topped it with the panko. You could serve this with a rice or with bread or with a salad. You don't even need a starchy element. And it kind of felt like a special weeknight meal.
Wow, that sounds so great. And I would just say, I think you could also make it all in one skillet if you started by toasting those panko breadcrumbs first and wiping it out, which is when I read the recipe, I would be like, oh, I'm going to backtrack and make those toasted breadcrumbs first so I don't have to clean two skillets. But it's so interesting to think about this sort of creamy, tomatoey, but not tomato chunks, that umami depth that you can only get from tomato paste.
And I love that she includes like look for your tomato paste to get a shade darker when you saute it. That's such an important step with tomato paste. It really takes the tinniness out of it. I also love that she uses milk and not cream. And I believe she says you can use any kind of milk. So I think if you were non-dairy, I think an unsweetened almond milk specifically could actually work here. I think it's really versatile. And I think the idea of a creamy tomatoey bean is not my first thought. And so I love having this kind of in the repertoire now of weeknight dinners.
Yeah.
So Carrie, what was your best bite of the week?
Well, Sonia, I am so thrilled to report that I was invited to a dinner party that my friend was hosting. And this is a group of old friends. We had a supper club almost 20 years ago that was started by my one friend, Amelia. And it's a group of us, and we would take turns hosting. And when you were the host, you did all the work. And so everyone just got to show up. And so there was only one time when you had to cook everything and do all the dishes and all the things. So my friend Dinah hosted all of us because my friend Amelia no longer lives in Los Angeles, and she was here visiting with her family. And first of all, Dinah is my friend. She's also one of our listeners. And she recently made the brisket recipe that we shared from our spring hosting episode. And she also made the snap pea radish salad too. And she said her family really loved it. So I really loved that feedback.
That's so nice to hear.
We love hearing from our listeners, whether they're our friends that are reaching out to us, or if you want to reach out to us on social media or
our hotline.
Our hotline.
We have a hotline. You can call us, and we link the number in our show notes every time.
Yes. So anyway, I went to Dinah's house. I didn't know this because I didn't know Dinah in college, but she actually studied abroad for a semester and she chose to go to Paris. And so she decided she was going to make this meal with all of the things that she really loved. She did make French onion soup, which we've talked about recently, which was excellent. But the thing that was my best bite this week was this French salad with pan-fried goat cheese on it. Do you know what this salad? I've never had it before, but it was so good.
It's such a classic Parisian salad. It has a little like breadcrumb crust around the goat cheese, right?
Yes. There's a salad that I like to eat in Paris. It's called like frisée à lardon, which is frisée and some hard-boiled eggs, and then you kind of cook a little bit of bacon, and it's like a warm dressing, so it sort of wilts the salad. That's usually what I choose if I'm happen to be in Paris, but I've never tried this one. And what I liked that Dinah mentioned is that you actually need, when she said goat cheese, I immediately think of a chèvre, like a soft chèvre that's very creamy and spreadable. And she said you actually need one that has a rind because it will hold its shape better. And so when I was looking at a recipe, because I have never made this and I had only eaten it once, I was looking for a recipe. There's a recipe on Recipe Tin Eats where she really talks you through every element. Nagi is a writer. She lives in Australia. And she mentions too that The French tend to use unpasteurized Chev, and you can't even get that in Australia. So she gives a lot of comps of like what you can find and what you can use. But you really want like a rind cheese that's very soft and creamy. And then you just bread it and flour it and fry it in a pan. But that's the last thing that you want to do. You want to get everything ready before in your salad ready before you fry your goat cheese. And so what was great about this group of friends is we've cooked together a lot. We've spent a lot of time together. So we were kind of all in the kitchen, and she was like, here, you cut the tomatoes and I've already washed the lettuce. I guess if you've never had this salad, what I really love are there's so many elements. The base is red oak lettuce, which is really beautiful because it's like sort of green and white and sort of tinged purple. And there's two kinds of nuts, toasted pine nuts, and then she also used a candied walnut, and I sort of crunched that up, and then sliced tomatoes. We used cherry tomatoes.
Oh, interesting.
There is also bacon in this, and she had, I think, fried that earlier in the day, so we put some bacon crumbles in there. The dressing is pretty standard: olive oil, balsamic, a little bit of garlic, a little bit of shallot or onion, and a little bit of chives and Dijon mustard. But it's the combination of all the things, and then, you pan fry this goat cheese, and then you immediately serve it. So the goat cheese kind of runs onto your salad, and it was so delicious.
So interesting. It's a little different than the kind I've had, which I find it's like really interesting to hear about another version of it. The kind I've had, and I have to say, I think I may have even made it years ago because I know there's a recipe in one of Ina Garten's cookbooks because you know how much she loves. I think it's in her Paris cookbook, in fact, in that exact cookbook. And so she doesn't use a rind goat cheese. She just uses those regular logs of goat cheese, and she cuts rounds, and she does bread it and pan fry it just the same way. But it does hold its shape. I mean, I imagine it's a little more delicate than if you have the benefit of rind. But what's different is it doesn't run. So it holds, because the whole thing is the same texture. It sort of stays in its patty round form. And then I think the kind that I had was just a Dijon vinaigrette with a mix of lettuces. And I think frisee was in mine. And so it's so interesting because it almost sounds like a little bit more like your frisee salad. This salad you're describing has so many more elements than I've had, which also sounds really delicious with the tomatoes and the nuts. That sounds like such a fun, more substantial salad.
It was very substantial. And we're old friends. There was a lot of chatting. So by the time I took the picture, the cheese had, gone to room temperature, and it's like not super sexy, but it was just that combination of that really great dressing. And it just felt like something you could easily make from grocery store ingredients and make it really special.
Yeah, it's such a great reminder, too, that a great salad can be part of a special meal. It can be part of entertaining. And it's just a way to take a salad into a new direction, make it a little like that hot element is what changes it.
Yeah, it really changed it for me. It was such a new, beautiful way of experiencing that mix of vegetables.
Well, thank you, Dinah, for feeding Carrie and listening to the show and introducing us to another great recipe. And every Sunday, we're actually sharing salad recipes on our Substack. You can find the link to subscribe in our show notes, along with the recipes from today's show.
And until next time,
bye.
Bye. Thanks for being our food friend.
If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with friends. We love hearing from you, so follow us on Instagram or drop us a line at foodfriendspodcast.com.
Yes, we'd love to hear from you and your food friends. Happy cooking and eating.